Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come on down round the campfire with me and my friend Nate from WASD20. Hello, Nate. How are you?
Hello, Robert. I'm doing well. Great to be
Good.
here. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad. I'm glad to have you on. It's been a long time since we managed to collaborate on anything. We had a game that we played in once, like 2 years ago, and now we're back.
Yes, yeah, it's good to see you again.
Good, best friends. We're closest of friends.
That's right.
One stream shared every 2 years.
Yep. Well, no, I was excited you asked me to be here. These conversations just with fellow RPG fans, with fellow content creators, don't happen often enough for me.
No,
So
they don't. They come up. That's one of the reasons I started this short rest stream, is that there's so much content out there, and like there's still people that I'm meeting, even in my particular area of the world, that are like D&D specialist content creators on some platform or another, and they're doing really successfully, and I still had never even heard of them or met them or whatever, and I'm like, how are there that many people making D&D content that even in this very niche industry, I'm still not meeting everybody yet. It's just insane how much stuff there is, and and a lot of it incredible stuff as well. People are creating things left and right, and so it's just impossible to keep up with it all. It's impossible to consume it all, and so part of the purpose of this series was to be like, hey, let's give myself a reason, an incentive reason, making content to also actually catch up with people as well. So I'm glad that you're here to chat with me today, so I can get to know you a little better. It was a lot of fun playing with you that one time, and also I'd been a fan of your videos for a long time at that point. It was one of my first.
Well, thank you.
It was 2 years ago, so it was still early days of streaming for me. I think I've been streaming for about 2.5 years now, so 30 months, because somebody's just got a 30-month subscription. Thank you, L Brown.
30 months. There you go. Very nice.
And so it was early days for me, and I was like still kind of excited for meeting everybody that I was meeting, because I was I mean I'm still struggling to put myself in that space and to acknowledge the fact that I'm actually making some good stuff now. People have told me that they've been like they've felt the same way about meeting me that I was feeling about meeting people like yourself when I was first starting, and going, I've been watching his stuff for ages. And
yeah, I mean that's a weird feeling, and it's weird when people who like are doing really cool stuff say that, like say that they appreciate me. It's like, no, I watch your stuff. No, I watch your stuff. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I've heard that before as well. Yeah, good stuff. So for people who don't know, let's start with an introduction. Although actually we can't call this short rest and not start with a short rest. We'll start with an introduction after we set up what is happening on this short rest. So are we on a mission and we need a rest in the middle of it? Have we just had a fight? Are we like, what sort of terrain are we in? What do you reckon?
Yes, I'm thinking we have just exited a ancient druid circle where we were just passing through and admiring, perhaps.
Okay.
But some sort of nature spirits, or perhaps little forest creatures ambushed us, and basically we got the feeling that, oops, we stepped in the wrong circle here.
I like that. Yes, I like that. I do like using ancient druid circles. I've used them a couple times in my games. There's one of my games coming up. Is it even on this Tuesday? I think it might even be coming this Tuesday, where there's a part of the world called Lizard Rock, and it's an old abandoned civilization of lizard folk that lived on this rock that kind of, from one angle, if you turn your head and squint like you do with rocks sometimes, you're like that outcropping of kind of mountainous boulder or whatever is it kind of looks a little bit like a chameleon, and at the top of it the lizard folk used to have like a druid circle that would periodically open a portal to the Beastlands, and then they would go through and hunt and stuff. And so one of the party is a lizard folk, and has been super excited to get to Lizard Rock just because of the name. And then he got there and found that it was a druid circle, and he's a druid as well. And he's like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" And then periodicity of this portal opening is still a mystery to him. So he keeps going back there, being like, "Is it open? When does it open? When do I go through and hunt?" And then in the evil way that I do as a dungeon master, I'm constantly putting more plot hooks in my games than they could possibly pick up. Just so that the ones that they do follow, they end up missing all of the other ones, and then those ones progress without them, and they feel like they're missing out, and it feels like more of a real world with things happening around them. And one of the things is the rest of his party keep voting on anything but Lizard Rock. So they're going, oh, there's this Everstorm over here with some sort of evil whatever happening, and let's go deal with the hobgoblins attacking the dwarves over here. And every month he's like, let's get back to Lizard Rock.
Oh man, that's great.
Love me a druid circle. All right, so we've
Lizard Rock.
So we've been passed through a druid circle, and we got attacked by nature spirits, and we managed to survive it. So now we're pretty knackered. We could do with a breather, a sit down.
Yeah.
What are we eating and drinking on this short rest then? Just things from our canteens and mess kits, or are we going out hunting? Or I suppose our instinct would be to go out hunting, and then we're like, maybe not. Maybe we just got attacked by nature spirits for being in the wrong area.
I don't think the surrounding folk would take too kindly to that. So I think we're sticking to our water and rations. Yeah. It's meager.
Yeah.
Water. The ale is long gone. The wine, the one bottle of wine we're saving for a special occasion.
Yeah.
And so we're eating some perhaps some dried meats, some dried figs that we picked up in a nearby city, which are delicious.
Delicious. They're our treat.
And perhaps some apricots too.
Take our mind off of things. Excellent. Well, that's the short rest as is. Are we around a campfire, or have we got like dancing lights or something up? Or
I imagine we have risked a meager campfire.
We put our usual stringent fire checks in place and then doubled them and went like, we cannot afford to piss off any more nature gods.
No, this fire is very well contained within a little circle of rocks.
Constantly looking at it. Okay, it's not very restful because we're constantly on edge about the fire. Wonderful.
Yeah,
well,
perhaps.
now that we're all settled into our short rest around the campfire, let's start with the name WASD20. Where did it come from? It's pretty. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but is there anything else?
Yeah. So there's two aspects of that. There's kind of the computery, WASD, the keys you use to move in most computer games and first-person shooters and whatnot. And then the D20, and the D is in the middle there, so it gets kind of used twice. That's the clever part.
Very clever. I don't know if you see what he did there, guys.
But yeah, the reason for that is because I started my channel thinking, well, I love computer games and I have for years, and I want to, I would love to create videos. I had created a couple on a different channel, and I had a blog going for a while about video games, just kind of commentary and writing, and those didn't go anywhere. People they were not viewed or anything like that. Right. But I was mostly doing it just for the pleasure of creating something, and then I just started getting into tabletop role-playing games, and really thought my channel would maybe be a 50-50 split between those two things. And but everyone makes Let's Plays, and this was 2014, and the jig was up. Everyone's doing it by now, and so those didn't go anywhere. But the D&D stuff was a much just a smaller niche that was growing, and so my stuff on those topics started going places, and so I kept doing more.
Fair enough. And so the D20 is really doing a lot of the heavy lifting of the name.
Yeah. So it sure is.
Do you still do any video gamey stuff, WASD side of things?
I'll say that once in a while, I have a smaller live channel where I mostly run D&D and stuff. But once in a while, I will stream some PC games on that channel. It's just youtube.com/WASD20 live, and yeah, here and there I'll jump into like, some Baldur's Gate 3 or Solasta Crown of the Magister, or usually it's an RPG or something
Yeah.
fantasy related that I'm playing there.
Yeah, because then it's not a complete jarring experience for the people who are signing up for one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I play a lot of Rocket League and Overwatch, and it's like, I'm just think, A, those are competitive and I'm not great. B, like I don't think that really my audience would love it as much as,
Yeah.
some good old computer RPGs.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So when you started out, you did the WSD and the D20, very clever. And then at what point did you decide that it was going to be the D20? You said that was it just a product of looking at the view counts of the different things and being like the D20 stuff is the
Yeah.
RPG stuff is doing better.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. Just the views, and I got involved in a community, actually. That was a big part of it too, called the YouTube RPG Brigade. And it was a Facebook group that it might still be around. I don't know, but it kind of went downhill a little bit. Anyway, it was a cool group because it was just basically people posting videos in Facebook comments, and then like posting their own videos, and it was a lot of just like RPG mail, like here's what I got in the mail, or like
Right.
here's some musing thinking about this topic, and they were not very well produced at all. And so for the most part, it was just people talking to each other. And yeah, it was a good community, and that really kind of fostered my growth in that area too.
Do you remember any other people in that group that are now big names as well?
Not like the biggest names or anything, but yeah, like influential in that group was Matt Click, who's done some writing for D&D, and he's a part of Absolute Tabletop. And then my friends, just my 4 friends at Absolute Tabletop, which is an awesome company, were there. Master of the Game, Juice from Master of the Game. He's not super big, but he's a cool guy, and I've played a lot with him over the years. Yeah, I mean, there were these there's these pillars of that community that were just like really cool people. Some of them, not all of them, I'll be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
But
you get
that I still like
in all walks of life. So.
Yeah, that they didn't get big or anything like that, but I still just have so much respect for them for like starting this thing before me, and some of them are still going doing cool stuff. There's a guy, Tim, is it Tim Harper? I think is his name. Anyway, Tim Wise is sometimes what he goes by. He's got good stuff. There's a few other guys there. Yeah.
Cool. And what did you do to sort of set yourself apart at that point? Because I imagine that that early in the D&D stuff, you didn't really need to set yourself apart too much because of the lack of the million different content creators making things.
Yeah, absolutely. Like all I had to do was, I think, make a like character creation tutorial.
Right, yeah.
And that was like, whoa, like this guy's trying to teach people. It's not just some random dude turning on a camera talking about some obscure supplement anymore, or some kind of niche topic about like cinematic role playing, it was all cool stuff. Don't get me wrong, it was all cool stuff. But this, I did kind of have that mindset.
The one thing that we're doing. Here's the simple, here's the player's handbook. Let's just open that instead.
Right, and I think since I was so new in the hobby myself, I had a bit of, and I'm a teacher. I very quickly became passionate about, hey, I'm just finding this. I may not be qualified to teach people anything, but here we go. I'm doing it anyway.
Fair enough. Did you sort of lean on that a little more in your early videos then, about like the teaching element of like, here's how to do this and here's how to do that, rather than like GM tips or anything like that? Were you?
Yeah, I would say I leaned more on like the side of character creation. Like I didn't feel definitely qualified, and I wasn't to be given a lot of GM tips early on. I did start running games right away. Like I was the GM.
Ask, like, when did you start getting into GMing?
It was that was I started my channel in like maybe May or April of 2014, and then I got Pathfinder Beginner Box, and I think that was my second video, was unboxing the Pathfinder Beginner Box. I immediately like ran it for some friends, and we were off and running. So that I started pretty quickly there, but when I opened that box, like I had never GM'd before. You can go back and watch that video. And this is Nate, who has never GM'd, trying to comment on like, what's in here? Like, what is this? So that was interesting.
Here's my insightful view as to what all of this stuff will mean from somebody who's never actually done it.
Yeah, and I was totally upfront about that. I was like, hey, I'm new to this. This is just my impressions as someone who's totally new to the hobby. Here we go. I took the approach of like, I'm documenting my journey into this hobby.
Yeah, of course.
At that point. But no, then like maybe a couple months later, 5e came out, and I made like a character creation tutorial, and I made some mistakes in that, as you might imagine. But anyway, and I made a couple more things like that started like getting me some popularity and kind of setting myself apart from that crowd. And I think there was a little bit of attitude in that crowd sometimes that was like, what is this guy doing? Like, he's trying to make videos that are more professional. It's all about the content. And, there was some kind of, curmudgeons there that were not loving what I was doing. But it was like
being like, oh, this guy's making things. Let's
tear
him down.
I think they might have been offended that it was evident that I wasn't just making videos to talk to them anymore.
Right. Yes.
I was making videos for a wider audience.
How dare he try and get new people into this hobby? Little did they know 5e was going to do a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure.
More people playing now than ever before. So you mentioned you're a teacher. What level do you teach?
I teach high school video production and government and sometimes U.S. history. Oh. So, yep, I live in the U.S. and I'm teaching American social studies things mostly.
What state are you in, if that doesn't dox you too much?
I'm in Michigan. Nope, I'm in Michigan. Oh, cool. Yep, I live in West Michigan, near Grand Rapids, and teach at a big high school. It's a private high school. It's about a 5-minute walk from my house. So that's kind of nice.
Very handy.
So I've grown a bit of a business here, but I tell people, I might as well just keep teaching. It's only like 5 minutes from my house. So
do your students recognize you from things as well? You've got D&D students who are like, "Oh, I found your videos online, sir."
Yeah, I've had a few of those. I had my first one like pretty much 6 months into the channel. It was just like this kid awkwardly walking into my room like, so I was searching for how to create a rogue in D&D last night. And I'm like, oh no, I'm caught. It's over. And yeah, since then it's been over. Like, the word is out, and it's not. No one makes a big thing of it or anything. I think people are used to it.
Yeah. Fair enough. So yeah, because they say like one of the best ways to learn a thing is to imagine yourself teaching that thing while you're learning it, so that you're fully understanding it, and then as you're teaching it to somebody else, you realize the bits that you don't understand. So I imagine coming at it from a lens of a teacher while you were learning the ropes of all of these Pathfinder and the early editions and stuff. Like then making videos explaining it to other people would have really helped to quickly solidify for you the rules of it. So you were for sure. So you started getting into TTRPGs with Pathfinder, or was there something else that got you into it and then you moved to Pathfinder?
Yeah, no, Pathfinder was my very first, and I think I used to listen to a podcast called the Giant Bombcast. It's a video game podcast, and they have a website. And I remember just seeing, I was really into video games at the time, and have been for years and years and years. But I remember them starting to think about trying D&D, and someone in the comments had said, "You don't want D&D, like you want Pathfinder." That's this was during 4th edition, and a lot of people felt a little bit betrayed by 4th edition. So, that's why I started Pathfinder, because I just heard through the grapevine, like, this is what you want.
This is the one.
Okay, sure.
Want. Sure. I mean, I can understand why people were saying that. I'm getting into Pathfinder at the moment just because I lost a bet, essentially. So our mutual friend, Dead Aussie Gamer, he's been teasing me about Pathfinder for years, because whenever I'm ranting about something in D&D, he's like, well, in Pathfinder, to the point where I've got a command in my channel that's just exclamation mark Pathfinder, and the response is "shut up, Dag." I
love it.
And so eventually I was doing a fundraising stream for American Cancer Society, and the final goal stretch goal. If I raise X amount of thousands of dollars, then I will learn the Pathfinder rules. I will run a three-part episode one shot for Dag in Pathfinder, and then of course as soon as that popped up as the stretch goal on the stream, as soon the donations went whoosh, and all of my community trolled me with it essentially, and so now I'm committed.
That's the best kind of trolling though.
And then when we met up at PAX Australia just before, Dag got me a Pathfinder badge, a little Pathfinder pin that I had to wear for my entire time at PAX Australia.
Oh no!
So yeah, that's finally coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I'll be doing three episodes of Pathfinder as the GM, and it'll be my first time running it. So I've got a series on my channel called Robert Reads, where I usually read some of the rule books and things because they just churn them out. They just keep churning them. I've not opened some of these. I've got Fizban's Treasury of Dragons has been out for ages now, and I've barely opened it.
Yeah, I'm the same with that book, and that's when I actually want to open.
Yeah,
I finally
it looks good. People are saying all sorts of good things about it in there, and I'm like, I don't have the time to read it.
Yeah, I finally just sold like 5 or 6 books. I wanted to donate them to my.
Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Like some of the MTG tie-in books, it was like, these are cool, but like, no, I'm not going to use them.
Yeah.
I appreciated looking at them and getting to review them or whatever, but no.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought about donating to my local RPG club at the school where I teach, but I have donated some books, and I know that they never get used. Like the 3 core books get used, and then the kids do homebrew and stuff, and I respect it. So anyway,
that's fair enough. Yeah, so I switched when I lost that bet. Essentially, I switched over to reading Pathfinder rule set as part of my Robert Reed series, and I just kind of read the book cover to cover. Well, I've almost finished it now. Man, it's a long book. There's so much crunch. So much crunch.
Oh man.
No, first edition. Dag's more comfortable with that, and because it's kind of for him and his purposes, and it was mainly also just for me to understand where Pathfinder came from. I was more interested in trying first edition first. One day I do, because I started with 5th edition D&D, I do want to eventually go back and try all of the early editions, just kind of to see what they were and what the hype was about them and stuff, and why people got into the hobby in the first place, and what about the early editions I can steal into the newer editions and things. Learning first edition Pathfinder makes it easier to someday learn 3.5. So I'm learning the Pathfinder rules. I'm gonna try and run it as accurately as I can to the rules, like sticking to all of the floating modifiers and things. And just so I can get the proper experience of it all. It's gonna be pretty exciting things.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. There's definitely things in it already that I can steal for D&D. There's definitely I'm definitely leaning towards I lean towards more of crunch heavy games, but not to the point of so many floating modifiers. I love the advantage disadvantage system, but I just wish that I think that 5e is fantastically simplified. I think it's a little overly simplified in some parts, and I'd like a little more crunch with things. I'd be interested in knowing why they didn't continue with kind of the model of advanced versions of the rules for each of the editions, because for ages I thought advanced D&D was just the 2nd edition, and it was ages into the hobby that people were like, no, there was original D&D and advanced D&D for 1st edition and 2nd edition and 3rd. Like they had that, and then in 3rd edition I think they combined them finally. But there's definitely call for it, because I was speaking with William Stark from the Dungeon Cast podcast, and he was saying like there's like he's been in the industry long enough to know to notice like swings and roundabouts with the situation. There's like a loop that goes where there's like really crunch heavy editions or modules or whatever, and people love it for a little while, and then they go, this is too complicated, and then they yearn for simplified rules, and then they bring up a more simplified rule, and then people go, yeah, but what about in this niche situation where I don't know what to do here? I shouldn't have to come up with a rule for that. There should be a rule for dealing with when somebody is grappled and upside down and tied up. And then they bring out rules for everything, and it becomes real crunchy again. People are like, yeah, here's what I want. And then they're like, it's too complicated. And he says it goes around like that. And I'm like, why do they not just have 2 at any one point then? 5th edition and advanced 5th edition for the people who are super into extra rules. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point.
And it's more stuff that they
Yeah,
can
it is
sell.
weird.
It's more books they can sell.
Yeah, I think the main thing is probably like dividing the fan base is something that
Yeah, true.
they're not wanting to do. And keeping, and it adds complexity even just in like, well, what do I buy? What do I want?
Which one
Um
do I? Yeah, which one do I go
because
for? I
right,
want
because
something
you
in the
will get
middle.
people.
And then people would be like, I want mediocre. I want medium D&D. I want to
Yeah,
bring out another one that's not this crunch heavy and not that simplified.
totally. And you will get people who are new and immediately want to jump to the more advanced thing just to have to avoid
Yeah.
buying more books later. And then,
And then they
but
get
is it
put
too
off.
complex for
Yeah, and then they
them?
get put off
Yeah.
by it
And
and they don't end up getting into the
mhm.
hobby and yeah,
Yeah.
end up
But no,
selling.
I think it makes sense from a gamer perspective. More options is absolutely good.
Yeah. So speaking of editions, though, so you started before Fifth Edition was out, and you started with
Yeah.
Pathfinder. Have you then gone back and played any of the other editions since?
No, I've not. Nope, I've never played third, 3.5, 4, or
I've played
earlier.
I've played
Um,
one I played one game of sort of a hybridized first D second D kind of thing with a
mhm.
fella on Twitch called Lord Kazumba. I don't know if you know him. He's in Philadelphia and he's a big name in D&D in D&D out that ways because he has been playing the same campaign for like 44 years. And he's super big on terrain. Like his whole thing
Mm,
on Twitch is that he's got like a 3 camera setup in his basement, and it's a huge, big gaming table, like the old-fashioned wargaming situation. And he's
yeah.
just got like terrain everywhere, and he's got all these minis and stuff, and he calculates all of the numbers for you, so you don't have to be worrying about all of the thaco and stuff.
Oh
Um,
man, that
and
sounds great.
yeah, and it was fantastic. He ran me a game once on stream, and it was a lot of fun. But that's my only introduction to it. I kind of wanted to play again with him and try and control some of the Thaco stuff myself, just to kind of get the feeling of what it would have been like to play the game back in the day when you had to do all of
Yeah.
those calculations and things.
Yep.
But maybe
Yeah. I mean, I think I used to be more attracted to the idea of going back and playing old school. I certainly think that today I have more of a desire, rather than going back and playing older editions. I have more of a desire to explore more indie games,
yes,
and kind
yeah,
of
I
like
love that as
some
well.
on the old school Renaissance side of things are attractive, and just new experiences that are fairly different from D&D as well. Like if I'm going to play a different game and take the time to learn a new rule set, like sometimes it's fun to just explore something very different,
Yeah,
like Fate or
yeah, I've not played Fate yet. I want to.
yeah. I don't love Fate. I played it once and it was like, I don't know if I want to play that much more. But things like that, or what's the Fiasco?
hmm
I used to play a bit of the Fantasy Flight Star Wars
Right, yeah.
games. Yeah, stuff like that.
Have you played a game called Ten Candles or heard of it?
I have not, and that one I have heard of it. It sounds really cool. It's
It
a
is.
horror game, am I
Yeah, it's
right?
a horror game. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, horror game. And it's really interesting that I'm discovering my tastes around horror as I'm exploring things like that because as a kid hated horror films. I don't watch them. I've got too much of a vivid imagination. I definitely don't have aphantasia. I can picture things very clearly, and so horror
Yeah.
really helps to really keep me up at night because I can picture all sorts of things that are hiding in the darkness. So I hate horror films. I never thought I was a big on horror kind of genre until I started being a storyteller and a role player, and then I enjoy playing in horror games and I enjoy running horror games particularly because I've got such a gruesome kind of mind for gory details and the ways that I can creep people out with my words. And so I always run a Halloween special for my story that I'm running on a weekend, an interactive game called Twitch Tales. And so I always run a Halloween special, and I'm told that they're pretty scary and pretty macabre and stuff. So it's pretty
Yeah.
exciting things. And so I recently got the chance when meeting up with a bunch of my fellow creators, Dag and people, to run to play in 10 Candles. And man, it's a fun game. It's so
Mm.
immersive and visceral. And I think I got a note I saw advertised that somebody, is it Geek and Sundry, are going to be running a game on stream or something, or maybe it's Critical Role. I can't remember. Somebody's going to be running a 10 Candles thing on stream, which is really interesting. Because when we were playing, we were like, this is the sort of game that you can't stream. Like, this is the sort of game you got to be in person, because there's literal candles and you've got to be burning paper and you've got to be like. And so I'm really interested to watch that and see how it plays out. If they're all in the same studio and then they're just recording it and broadcasting it, that might work. But even then, it's like, it's about the ambience of setting you've got to play in the dark with the only light, the candles that you're extinguishing, so that by the end of the game, you're down to one tea light lighting the entire table, and you can barely read your character sheet and stuff, and that's all part of it. So having that in like a studio with lighting and cameras and stuff, I'm not sure if they'll be able to capture the ambience, but I'm certainly looking forward to seeing if they can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I like games like that are kind of designed to be played in person, and I think you can figure out ways to approximate the experience virtually. But I think Fiasco is another one that I really have enjoyed. That just given the like nature of like having all these dice and being able to like pick, like, I'll take this white one and you can take that black one, and you can have this pool of dice that you're selecting from to do certain things. Right. Makes it seem like you would need probably like Tabletop Simulator or something in order to do that well. And there's another game that I did. Alice is Missing, which was super interesting. That it was challenging to do it online. I just feel, but there are ways to do it. There are two ways. You can do it on Roll20.
Is that the one where you're meant to be like texting each other and stuff while you're playing?
Yes. Yeah? Exactly. It's all play by text. Yeah. So we played in Discord, but you can't actually play it on actual phones. But yeah, you can do it on Roll20.
I would have thought,
or
like,
through Discord. There's a bot.
A lot about it, but I would have thought that would translate to online because it's already text based. So you'd just be able to like have that on the screen and the text based and stuff. But is there a lot of
I thought that too. There's a lot of cards, like pulling cards that like, here I can't see your card, but here it is. So that sort of stuff makes it challenging.
And the premise, for anyone who doesn't know, is that it's kind of like another horror. It's a thriller rather than horror. That one, right? It's like somebody's gone missing in the community, and you're texting each other, and you've got like. I mean, you've played it, so you've got a mutual connection.
Yeah, you've got a mutual connection to Alice, and Alice can be there's like a variety of different pictures you can choose from. There are wanted missing posters, you can make up all kinds of details about who Alice is, but you all have a connection. There's like Alice's brother, Alice's ex, etc. And then you are all kind of texting each other like, hey, have you seen Alice? Is kind of the premise. And no one's seen Alice, and she's missing. And then you're pulling cards that like kind of escalate things, and things happen. And you can it's made to be played once, but there are like maybe 3 or 4 different endings, and different, obviously almost every game will be different in some way, because you're taking a lot of liberties and making things up. It's cool.
I really like the confidence in game designers making games that are only meant to be played once, because obviously you're losing a lot of people's replayability. You're losing a lot of people's like wanting to buy the game for longevity and to have something that they can do multiple times. So for them to lean into it, commit to it, and just be like, no, this is a game that you best experience just once. I've seen it on shelves and board games shops and things, and I've picked it up and looked at the blurb and been like, I definitely want to play this one day. I also think, I don't know if it's related, but I'm pretty sure there's a podcast I was listening to for a while called Alice is Missing. It was like a narrative. It might be called Someone Else is Missing, and I'm pretty sure it would be an A if it isn't Alice. But it was kind of like a horror thriller kind of narrative story podcast.
Yep. That's cool.
About like a trucker woman who's gone missing, I think.
Oh, nice. Yeah, but what you're saying about like they didn't skimp on this either. Like, it's a nice quality box and book, and nice like tarot size color cards. And for something you're only going to play once, it might seem like kind of a waste. But no, I enjoy having it on my shelf, and I also am in the position where I can share this game with a lot of others, even if I'm not the one running it. I have run a tabletop RPG class actually at the high school where I teach.
Oh, cool.
Several times, and it's January. We have this thing called winterim. It's like an interim, a 2-week January term, basically. And we're encouraged to do all kinds of different things. So I've run a tabletop RPG class several times, and that one was a little bit of like a stretch for high schoolers. It's a little risky, I'd say,
Right.
in terms of just there's a lot of information on safety tools here, and a lot of ways that a teenager who's missing, us telling a story about that, could go wrong.
Yes, I can imagine that.
Anyway, I felt like the group I had could handle it last year, and they did, and I look forward to sharing it with other high school students possibly in the future.
So what the class was, did you have to pitch it to the people that you had to run it by, that like, oh, it's got this, it will have this benefit and this benefit, and you know, it'll teach kids about social interaction, and it'll teach them creative thinking, and like all of the usual things that we I think when we're trying to bump up all of the good things that TTRPGs can do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did that, whether or not I had to. Like, I think they have a lot of trust in us as teachers,
right,
and it's a really good environment in that way. And because it's only 2 weeks, the stakes are low, and we're encouraged to do fun things that relate to some of our hobbies, because there are probably kids who do enjoy or would enjoy our hobbies too. So.
And did you have like a curriculum for it, like what you were trying to get out of it by the end of the 2-week class, or was it just kind of like a turn up and play some RPGs?
No, I definitely had a curriculum. I would do history lessons every day on mostly the history of D&D, which is the dominant game in the hobby. So I do a little like 15-minute, I had some slides and we'd talk about the history. What else? We did some world building exercises. I taught like a mini class on miniature painting, and we actually got our hands on some paint and minis. Things like that. And then, I mean, learning D&D is kind of daunting for some kids who, we all learn at different paces and have different tolerance for complex rule systems. So, so character creation, for example, is something I did have attempted almost every time. And it can be a time-consuming process with like 20 high school students.
Oh yes, it can be a time-consuming process with like 4 people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so usually I have some helpers
making characters.
Yeah. So, and then I mean, encouraging kids to GM for the first time is a big goal of mine, where we start with maybe the more experienced GMs, and then I really encourage the experienced GM who runs maybe the first day of playing D&D to like then pass it off to another person in the group. Ideally someone who hasn't done it before, and kind of be a mentor for them and show them here's where we left off, and here's maybe where you could take things.
So you like getting your high school kids addicted to this consuming hobby of ours.
That's right.
Gotta get them in early. The first one's free. First 2 weeks is free, and then you gotta buy the books. You gotta buy the dice and then GM screens.
That's right. No, we actually had a GoFundMe to raise money for books and dice, so we have all that stuff. But kids still want their own. Let's be honest.
Is that when the RPG? You mentioned there was like an RPG club as well at the school.
Yeah.
Is that when that started, like as a tie over from the RPG class that you were running?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I am not super involved in the RPG club, unfortunately. I'm an advisor, and I have GM'd for the club before. But I'm usually more of like just a moral supporter. Like, I believe in this, and you guys keep going.
Yeah, I mean that's the purpose, and that's the dream, is to be like, hey, get into the thing so that you guys can keep going with it, because I can only be in so many places at once.
Yep, exactly. So I have another staff member named Liz, and she's awesome at she runs the game every week almost, and she's a lot more hands-on with it. But I do help out. And that was like maybe a year or two after I started running that class. And there was immediate desire. I just didn't have the time, and we didn't have a staff member at the time. So it finally did happen, and I'm glad it's still going.
What made you want to jump to D&D over Pathfinder? Was it simply just like you understood that like it was 5th edition was getting more popular than Pathfinder was, and so you needed to kind of jump ship to go with the flow in terms of growth of your channel, or did you try at that time and actually genuinely like it better than Pathfinder?
Yeah, I genuinely liked it more. I did, but I do think there's certainly an aspect, not even that for the growth of my channel, because at that time, like I had nothing. Like when
Mm.
fifth edition came out, and I officially made the switch. Like I think, yeah. Anyway, um, I think there is an attraction certainly that all of us can relate to of like, oh, this is the new thing. Let's do this.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And that's kind of sad in a way. But that was very much a thing for me. And this sounds bad too, but there is actually something to the name Dungeons and Dragons. That's like it's the original. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Um, and
yeah.
when you
It
say
definitely has weight to it. Dungeons and
yeah,
Dragons. It conjures it, like does a lot of the work for you, like explaining what it is you do and things. And like people have heard of Dungeons and Dragons. Even people outside of the TTRPG community have heard of D&D. They haven't heard of Pathfinder. So it takes one of those extra steps out of explaining what you do to your family when you meet up with them. What do you do for a living? I'm a
yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons streamer.
yeah. Yeah, it makes things a little bit easier, but still like there you'll still get confused looks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes I lean into that by just saying I'm a dungeon master and then just leaving it at that and be like, okay. It's not as dodgy as it sounds. I just entertain adults online. I just help them act out their fantasies. It's just
This is going in a direction I heartily approve of. Yeah, yeah, no, I'll joke with my wife sometimes, like, you know, if we're out, like we have neighbors around who will often have like a bonfire in the backyard or something like that, and we're just hanging out, having some beers, and sometimes it's like, oh, I gotta go, I got a game, guys. And then the neighbors will say like, oh, is he the game dungeon master, game master for this one? Because I get stressed before that, and there's a difference between me running a game and
right.
me like being in a
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
So my wife is very aware of this. She'll ask like, are you running this one? Because
yeah.
you know,
I know what
like
to
if you don't
prepare
know
for.
yet, no, I'm not. Like I would be stressing way more if I was. Yeah. So anyway, I'd be in a crabby mood, snapping at all of you, and I'd be in the basement all day prepping. But all that to say, you know, I do enjoy joking a little bit about like, well, you know, to the neighbors who are like, "Oh, are you the dungeon master?" I'll say, "Well, I'm her dungeon master." Like hug my wife, or, you know, just get a little
Yeah.
weird with it. It's a good name.
It's a yeah, it's definitely something that brings up raised eyebrows sometimes if they don't know what you're talking about. I've
Yeah.
only once or twice met somebody who had never even heard of Dungeons and Dragons before, that I had to fully explain
Yeah.
everything that I do right from the very beginning, right from the ground up. And I was
Yeah,
like,
because
because normally you kind of it's always the case of like, what do you do for a living? And you're like, where do I pitch this? You're gonna
mhm,
look at them, gauge them, and be like, how much am I gonna like? Are they in the nerd community at all? Have they heard of tabletop role
yeah,
playing games? If I just use the acronym TTRPG, is that gonna no maybe
yeah,
I'm an entertainer online. Okay, we'll pitch it there, and they're like, "Oh, cool. What do you
yeah.
do?" Like, and then sometimes they'll be like, "Are you on Twitch?" And I'll be like, "Okay, so they've heard of Twitch."
There we
And
go.
I'm
Yep.
constantly playing this game of like, where am I gonna come in here to then explain further what I do?
Yeah,
And
you
this
nailed it. You nailed it.
yeah, this other one, she was like, "What do you do?" As I was an entertainer, and she goes, "Oh, like what's?" And I was like, "I tell stories online with there's a game called Dungeons and Dragons, and normally that's when the recognition." She goes, I was like, "Okay, so have you heard of role playing?" And she's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Not that kind of role playing. It's not. They haven't got the monopoly on the word role play in the kink community."
That's right.
So yeah, I really had to go all the way back and be like, all right, so imagine, and I eventually went back to, so have you heard of like choose your own ending books? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so imagine you're reading a choose your own ending book, but you get to the bottom of the page, and instead of if you want to go to the McCreary's house, turn to page 6 and blah blah blah, page 7, instead of that, you also have an infinite list of things that you want to do, and it's just your imagination as to what you do. Like,
Yeah.
do you want to take off your shoe? You can do that. You can if you want to. And I finally managed to sort of explain it like in that way as to what this game is. Like you can just you're
Yeah.
playing a game, and you're deciding what to do in the moment, and you can decide anything you want, and then you roll a dice to see how it turns out.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just explaining to people who have never played before, like the infinite choices thing. That's an
Yeah.
awesome thing to explain. To be able to say, like, hey, or with computer games, it's like, you know, so have you played like the Elder Scrolls? You played Skyrim? Have you played Zelda? Like, you know, imagine
Yeah,
those sorts
yeah.
of games, but you can like you
It's
can really
fully
do
open
anything.
world. It's
Yeah.
literally open world.
And the world can change like that. Like you're
Yeah.
not stuck with this map. Like no.
How often
So yeah, that's pretty cool.
how often do you actually get to play?
Oh man, not often enough. So like I ran a game about a month ago, and I haven't played since then. Now it's been a bit of a rough month. We had some my father-in-law passed away in September,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry to hear that.
um, yeah, thank you. So that was a factor certainly, and I feel like you know that kind of put me in just a rut too with creating. Like I finally
Yeah.
put out a video a few days ago, and it was my first video in I think 5 weeks, maybe. I don't know. That seems
Yeah,
crazy to me, but
I was in the YouTube yesterday, just sort of prepping for this because I was like, I hadn't seen a video from him in a while. And then
yeah,
I saw one from 2 days ago, and I was like, oh, I guess he is still putting them out. I just aren't seeing them because YouTube's algorithm
yeah.
is not pushing them to me, I guess. But that's probably what it is.
No, yeah, yeah. So I do get in ruts like that here and there, but that was a abnormally long one. So anyway, all that to say, I don't play often as I would like to, but I would say on average, you know, 2-3 games a month probably for me. I'm not like a huge
As a player or as a dungeon master or some of each.
both, you know, a little of both. Probably mostly running stuff. Yep.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna be my next plans are to run the One Ring from Free League, second edition of the One Ring. So I'm excited to do that. The original plan was like that's going to be a summer thing, and then that's going to be a September thing, and that's how it's been. But so anyway, I'll be running that sometime soon,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to that. I'll be doing the starter set, which is a Hobbit adventure.
Oh,
It's
exciting.
all takes place in the Shire, which is a really cool idea for a starter set. Like, hey, to keep things somewhat limited in terms of not dumping everything on
Everything
you,
on you, the entire world. Yeah.
let's yeah, it's a good way to keep it simple.
Yeah, it's pretty smart. I mean, it's like it's already made for that because you look at the Hobbit and you look at the Lord of the Rings, and then you're like, which? It's like this one is the introduction to this one.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it fits really well with it. So is it? I don't know the system. Is it a D20 based system?
It is not. It uses so the One Ring was first published by Cubicle 7 Games back in maybe 2012 or something, and it was pretty well received. And it's got its own unique system. It's mostly a D12 to in terms of success or failure. You
Giving
might
some
be
love to
rolling.
the much ignored D12.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, in fact, I've got some of the dice right here. They had to send new D12s out because they actually had a printing error on them. And I felt so bad to have such a massive Kickstarter and then have like, oh, all our D12s were printed wrong. So you can see. Oh, let me adjust my focus here. You can see a little bit, maybe.
Oh
There's
yeah,
some funky symbols,
yeah.
like this is the Gandalf symbol actually,
Oh, okay.
and then there's also the Eye of Sauron there.
Oh yeah.
And so that's, as you can imagine, not a good thing. And then you've also got, I think, a lot of D6s for other things as
Right.
well. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
exciting.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't looked into that at all.
So
And
yeah,
is
there's a dearth of like Lord of the Rings games that I mean they're
yeah,
as old as time, as old as role playing games. People were making Lord of the Rings stuff,
yeah.
but it's getting a little confusing because there was the One Ring in like 2012 or whatever, and then there was Adventures in Middle Earth, which was a 5e adaptation of Middle Earth.
Right.
And I have some of those books, and they're out of print, and they're selling for crazy amounts of money now. And then now there's a new edition of the One Ring. Cubicle 7 lost the license, I think, or the rights, and so now Free League picked it up. There's the One Ring second edition, and now they just announced that there's going to be, and I think it might be out, the core book might be out now, a new fifth edition adaptation of Middle Earth as well that they're making. So it's just like, oh gosh, come on.
They're
We're
gonna make one
diluting it.
Yeah, they're gonna make one a Pathfinder version of it as well. Pathfinder 2
Yeah,
One Ring.
exactly. Yeah, who knows? Could happen.
The a friend of mine's got I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's a more wargamey Lord of the Rings as well, with a bunch of terrain and miniatures, and it's
Oh yeah, yeah.
more of a miniature war game rather than a role playing game. But
Yeah, there's a
um,
couple of those, and there's a board game box I just saw at the store. I was just at the hobby shop literally like 2 hours ago, and it was huge. And it was called Journeys in Middle Earth, and
right.
it's like an adventure game. But yeah, there's also like a war game,
Yeah,
and I think it
it's
might be
fun, and
from.
even though it's not a role playing game, like any game that I play tends to devolve into a role playing game, because
There
I'll
you
be putting
go.
on stupid voices for the meeples and things, and so
Well
like
done,
I was
well
doing that.
done.
I was like playing Legolas, and I was making decisions that weren't optimal, and the rest of the party were getting pissed off because I was like, but Legolas wouldn't. Why would I go back and try and kill that guy when there's that guy in front of me? And he's like, yeah, but he's the one who's got 3 attacks, and I'm like, I don't know that. I haven't seen that. They're like, you're not, get your head out of the not metagaming. You're allowed to metagame in this. You're meant to metagame because it's balanced around actually doing the optimal moves. I'm like, yeah, but I'll take that
Well,
guy.
good on you for representing the role players there. But yeah, I would have hated you too.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I see a comment in the chat. I hope you don't mind me calling some
No,
out. Are
please.
the players hobbits by default? Yes, they are in the starter set. There's actually there's the chance for some other things, but that's a bit of a spoiler.
Oh.
So you do all start as hobbits, and there's actually a chance to jump ship and play a different character. It's like 5 adventures. So
After you find the ring and devolve into Smeagol.
there you go. Exactly. That's the spoiler. Yeah.
That reminds me though, people in the chat, thank you for your patience. I know that I don't really interact with the chat much in these short rests, as well my longtime fans will know. But I do usually have a portion at the end where I do go over any questions that have come in during the game, so during the interview. Sorry. So if you want to use your channel points to redeem a Ask Me a D&D question, then it goes into my redemptions queue, and then I don't miss them, and I can call them out later. So if you've got any questions for me or Nate or both of us, or I was going to say or neither, but like if you've got a question for neither of us, that wouldn't really work. But if
For
you've
the
got
ether.
yeah, for the ether, if you want to put it out for the chat, if you want to ask a question of somebody that might be watching this VOD when it goes to YouTube later, then you want them to see the question, then ask that now, and I will read it out. So yeah, get your D&D questions in, and I'll ask them at the end. So the one D&D, so you're the One Ring. Sorry, One D&D. We could talk about that as well.
That's another
That'd
thing.
be a whole topic. The One Ring. You've been a fan of Lord of the Rings for a while, so that's what made you want to run it,
Yeah.
or it's just like a famous
Yeah, I've
RPG, so you
definitely.
want to give it a go.
No, it's definitely a Lord of the Rings thing for me. I've been a fan for a long time. Probably read the Hobbit when I was 12 or 13 for the first time,
Hmm.
and that started a love of the Lord of the Rings. So yeah, it's cool. It's a
I've
little
always,
daunting.
yeah, it's
Go ahead.
very. I mean, yeah, I've always found it so fascinating how different Lord of the Rings is to The Hobbit. Like I read The Hobbit
Mm,
as a kid and
mhm.
studied it again in like English in high school or something, and then when The Hobbit was being filmed here in New Zealand. I was auditioning for it, and so in preparation, I was like, "Let me just brush up on The Hobbit because it's been a while." And I ended up reading the whole thing in a day. It was so easy, like it's a children's book.
Yeah,
It's so thin. Um,
yeah,
but The Lord of the Rings, I've tried a couple of times to get to read it, and I just can't. I just can't get into it.
yeah.
It's so dense, and I keep
Yep.
getting put off by like the songs that have no melody because I'm like I don't know what the
Oh
melody is to
man.
this song, so I can't sing it, and a lot of the words
Yeah,
are made up Elvish words or something, so I don't know even
yeah,
how to pronounce them while I'm singing them, and then there's a whole
yeah.
bunch of lore and history that I'm like I don't know who these people are, so I just watch the movies.
Yeah, no, it's I can sympathize a lot with that. And I would say 5 years ago, I would say I was one of those people who said, read The Lord of the Rings once, and
Mm.
that's enough. Um, I loved it and I love the movies, but I actually just started reading it. I got a Kindle for my birthday back in September, and I was like, I'm gonna pick up The Lord of the Rings because this might be a good chance to start reading this again. And I'm loving it, The Fellowship of the Ring. But all the things you're saying are true. The songs, I wonder if that gets I hope the songs become less frequent than they are in like the first half of the Fellowship of the Ring, because
There
there
are
are a lot
so
of
many
songs.
songs. I remember that. That's like the one. That's the one thing that I remember putting me off most about reading Lord of the Rings was there's just the frequency of the songs, like every other page. And I'm like, I don't know what the melody is. I don't know how to harmonize anything here. I don't know even like who's singing and who's joining in. And
Yeah.
skip.
No, if they just had a to the tune of
To the tune,
there, like that's
to the tune
something,
of
you know?
Happy Birthday.
Exactly. Like, give me something.
All of the Lord of the Rings songs are sung.
I would sing that crap in the shower if they put it to the tune of in there. Those would be stuck in my family's head constantly.
Yeah.
But no, it is good. I'm enjoying it a lot.
How many people do
But
you have
yeah.
to? How many people do you have to run with for the One Ring?
I think it is 4 players.
Yeah.
Four hobbits. It might be 5 though. I don't remember. Yeah. Right now I've just been reviewing the rules a little bit, and I just got
You
this
don't
new
need a
book.
group of 9 fellowship.
No, you don't. I just got this new one, The Ruins of the Lost Realm, which is more of a setting book with some adventure hooks and stuff like that for some of the areas that are not covered in the main book. I just got to show people this because it's awesome. Where'd it go? Yeah, like this illustration of Weathertop here is. Oh, there we go, that way.
Yeah,
it's just so cool. I love the art in here.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So cool maps and locations, and
it's pretty much all
I mainly got that book just for the pretty pictures.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty much all I can do. All I can get out of a setting book or a module book these days is just like opening it up and going, "Ooh, that's pretty."
Yeah. Oh man, I hear you on that. It's hard. The number of books the number of unread pages back there is far greater than the number of read pages.
Yeah. Man, I just like I am going to Bali for like 2 or 3 weeks in December, and I'm very excited for it because I'm very much a do things on holiday kind of a person. I'm like, activities and go and do this other thing, and you can only do this in Bali, so let's do that. Whereas my partner is like a very much enjoy your expensive accommodation and sit in like a very fancy Airbnb and just enjoy the pool and sit by the beach and read. And so she's been like, "You're not doing anything for this for this holiday, okay?" I was like, "Oh, but I can." And she's like, "No, you're not getting work done. You're not progressing anything. You're not working on your YouTube channel or your whatever. You're gonna sit by a beach and read." So a friend of mine brought me around a bunch of the Tamara Pierce books that a bunch of my community have been telling me I should read for a while. I don't know the first thing about Tamara Pierce or at work, but a bunch of people are like, you'd like it. Go make sure to read them. So I'm gonna read a chapter or 2 before I go to make sure that I'm not taking them and then realizing I hate them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But yeah, then I'm just gonna enjoy sitting down and reading. I might take some other stuff that I've been intending on reading forever as well.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That's one of my ideal vacations. Is just sitting and reading. I love it.
The sort of funny thing is that it's like, I'm looking forward to this vacation when I finally get to sit down and do nothing. But in order to prepare for that moment when I have to sit down and do nothing, I have to do more work to make sure that all of my YouTube stuff is still going while I'm on vacation. And so it ends up being the same amount of work. It's just you've taken the December work and you've put it in November alongside the November work.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, as a teacher, I hear you there. It's way more work to make sub plans than it is just to show up and teach.
Jeez. So we're like an hour and a bit into this conversation. I haven't even asked you about like the first stuff that I got into of your work, which is kind of your map work. So the thing that I always thought of WASD20 associated with was your wonderful advice on how to make maps. I still use that to this day. Like when I'm making things, it's still the advice of like, I start with the continent shape usually, then I decide where the mountains are from that. And then from there, that dictates where the rivers are. Those usually dictate where the forests go, and the rivers and the forests dictate where the humanity and the civilization and the towns and settlements are. And then from there, you've got your world diplomacy. If there's 2 cities next to each other, then they're either trading or at war, and all that stuff. There's just so much of your fantastic advice boiled down into a very short sentence there, but it's so ingrained in me to think that way about maps that when I started DMing for the Viva la Dirt League comedy group, they sent me like a world map that I was going to be using, and that's a weird experience. I don't know if you've ever had this situation, but I am DMing in their world. So I'm not fully in charge of the world building and things, and it's a weird experience to be DMing in a world that you're not world building. So I have to constantly run things by them as to like where is this city, and is there a plane that this happens on, because I kind of need it for this upcoming story without giving too much away to spoil the story for you. It's a weird experience, but they sent me through a map. And I was like, okay, cool, there's a mountain range here, and the river runs down from there, and it goes past these villages, and it goes past those villages, and it goes up into that mountain range, and then there's a double-ended mountain river there that runs from one mountain range into another mountain range. And I pointed that out to him, and he's like, meh. And I'm like, oh no, oh no, this is okay. Come up with a magical reason, Rob. Come up with a magical reason for it. There's a filter in the center of the river. It filters down into a big underground aqueduct, cave, lake, ocean. And so okay, cool.
Yeah, there you go. You got it. Yep. There's some sort of magical force underneath each of these mountain ranges pulling at the water.
Yeah.
It would be a massive lake, but instead it's a long river.
Logan says there's dragons and elves, but you draw the line at uphill water. Yep. You know it. There's got to be internal consistency, and if we've established the fact that gravity is a thing in this world, then water should flow downhill.
There you go. Yeah, that's funny. But no, that does seem like an odd experience. Like, running something in this world that they have created. I mean, we do that with published works, but that's a little different because it's like, here's this official canon book here, you know, and people all over the world are playing in this world, and also you can go watch videos about Forgotten Realms things or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which is why when I first started DMing, I just immediately was like, this is going to be a homebrew world, because I don't want to have to worry about getting everything right about Forgotten Realms and like having some nerd at my table and some future game being like, well, actually, you said it was only a week's journey from Waterdeep to Baldur's Gate, so therefore we should actually be. I was like, I don't know. If I make everything up, nobody can call me on it.
Yeah, I happen to know there's a smaller town to the west of Waterdeep that we could stop at.
Could stop there, and they do have a trading post that would be able to provide us with the needed weapons.
Exactly. No, I hear you there.
So tell me about the maps. About when did you start making map stuff and getting into map advice?
Yeah, so I have to give huge credit to a YouTube channel called Questing Beast, who mostly does old school Renaissance, like OSR book reviews nowadays, but used to make mapping videos, and I was inspired by his stuff to try my own map. And I turned on a camera, and people liked it. So that's really, I mean, the start of it. Obviously, I had the idea of, I have a homebrew world that I've already created. Now let's make a map for it, which a lot of GMs are in that position. And yeah, so that really took off. So I kept doing videos. I do find it like a little bit weird to be like the map guy in a lot of ways, in terms of like YouTube content creators at least. But to not really be making that many videos about maps anymore. It's like when you've got like one elephant ornament, and then somebody comes around and is like, oh, he likes elephants, and they get you an elephant as like a souvenir when they go on holiday, and now you've got two elephants, and then somebody's like, oh, he's got elephant, and your elephant and you suddenly become, and you're like, I never meant to be an elephant guy. Like, well, just people, it's a snowballing effect. Yeah.
So you made a map video and it went well, so people are like, more of those, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll have another map video, and now I'm the map guy.
Yeah, it's slightly true. Now I have probably made about 40 mapping videos, to be fair, but I feel in some ways like I love maps. I still work on maps regularly. I have a weekly map drawing stream for my patrons. I get map commissions, several a year, and I really enjoy I find it cathartic just sitting in my basement drawing,
Mm.
It's nice. But and just engaging with creative people in that way, and it's an honor when someone asks you to make the map of this thing they've created. But I do find it really challenging to continue making map content for my YouTube channel, just because I feel like in many ways I've said what I had to say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anything now is just like little extra things I'm trying to squeeze out of that topic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because obviously with a video, the whole point of it is that it's kind of there forever, and so people can go back and just watch it. And so making a refresh video that's like, it's just the same content I said 6 years ago, but now I'm saying it again
which I did do.
Beard or something.
Yeah, right. No, I did do that, and I feel like it was worth it because my production quality and sound and stuff had gotten a lot better. But now I'm like, I mean, sure, I will probably do that again in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. There's only so many
in
times
4K.
There's only so many times you can reboot a soft reboot of a franchise of map making.
Yeah, every YouTuber though experiences that a little bit. Like I had this video that did really well 2 years ago. It's gangbusters. I should do it again.
I should do it again. I should do that that same video again. And then you do it, and YouTube, it goes gangbusters, and you're like, well, okay, this is what we're doing now. I just have 2 years worth of content that I just keep I just use the same 2 years worth of content again.
I mean, I think you could definitely do that. I think it's very possible.
It would be funny to properly lean into that and never mention it, like never reference it yourself, and like make pretty much shot for shot and like the script for script the exact same video, just reshoot it and re-edit it with better production quality, but like the same content, and just see how long it takes for people to properly call you out on it.
I would love that experiment. If anyone who has a large enough following out there is totally willing to squander it for this fun experiment,
just for fun, just for please. The experiment of it.
For science. How dumb are my viewers? It's not true. That's not true.
What mapping software you do use when you're creating digital ones?
Yeah, so I use Photoshop, and I will still do some stuff on paper. And sometimes it's a combination where I start on paper and get the basic line work, shape of the continent, and maybe draw the mountains and forests, and then I scan it and we'll do some Photoshop work in terms of getting text that's not my chicken scratch, and maybe some fun aged paper effects and things like that. But sometimes I often do just start right in Photoshop, and I have this big old like drawing tablet, Wacom Cintiq. Digital drawing display that I use for that.
That's good. Yeah, I've been using I used pencil and paper for all of my earliest maps, which is great, but it does mean that I've now got a folder full of maps that I have to search through and look for, and they're getting all tatty because I've been using them for 6 and a bit years and stuff. So I've been trying more recently when I'm making maps to make them digital, just for the longevity of them. And it's taken a while to go through different programs and softwares trying to find one that vibes with me in my lack of digital artistry. I'm okay at drawing, but I'm not an artist by any means, and so I tend to just use something that does a lot of it for me, like Incarnate or something, or I can be like, here's a landmass and then subtract tool to make some rivers.
I still love Incarnate. I'm glad that tools like that exist. And I still play around with it. I jump in there, once a year or so just to see what new stuff they've added, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
for sure. I'm seeing some questions in the chat, guys. Don't forget to use the redemption of the D&D questions so that they don't get missing, because otherwise they'll just disappear into the ether. If you ask me the D&D question, then it'll be added to the redemptions queue, and I'll be able to see them later. What was I saying? So yeah, I use Incarnate for a lot of stuff, and I find it really useful ever since they added the undo button, because God, I don't know why that wasn't an initial feature. Like when I first started using Incarnate and they didn't have an undo, you accidentally, oops, I just erased all of this bit.
Yeah, totally.
Things, and they're like, we're adding undo. I'm like, that should have been a first feature.
Like, how on earth did it take a year and a half or whatever it was that existed without undo? That was the big selling point for Wonder Draft. I remember I did a video review of Wonder Draft comparing it to incarnate, and basically, I mean, I could have just made that video. They have an undo button, and then ended it right there.
Yeah. It's such an obvious. It's always baffles me when it's such an obvious feature that's missing, and then it takes the community going, "Hey, where's this button?" And people going, "Oh, there isn't one yet," for them to finally realize, "Oh, there's call for undo." Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Commands.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'm getting to the end of the things that I wanted to chat about, but there's obviously plenty more stuff we can talk about with D&D. Is there anything else that's coming up in the future for you that you want to talk about, or what's the future of WASD20?
Yeah. You know, I guess just I've been going through. I don't have anything specific. I'm not a very good business person in terms of like I have ABC events and this thing and this thing and this thing.
Makes sense. You know, got another life as a teacher. D&D isn't be all and end all.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a parent and I'm a teacher, and I stay busy. But I think also like I've just been going through a lot of thoughts about where D&D is headed, and kind of, you know, I sold some of my D&D 5th edition books, and I like a lot of the things they're doing, but I also just am kind of like getting antsy. I have a little bit of that kind of like antsiness of like wanting to try lots of different things. So I'm dabbling. That's why I'll be running the One Ring. I really am attracted to Dungeon Crawl Classics in a lot of ways. That's a really fun system. I've only gotten to play it once or twice. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on with me. I'm just thinking about what else can I do.
Expanding out of D&D as well, and being like, hey, there's more than just D&D in this world. And in case it's handy to set that groundwork now in case one D&D is a flop. In case suddenly everybody jumps ship because one D&D changes too many things or whatever. Yeah, there's I'd love to play more indie RPGs as well, and like different smaller systems, but again, it's a matter of finding the time to do so. Whenever I'm invited on somebody's channel to play something that's not D&D, I'm usually pretty inclined to say, yeah, let's do it. Next week I'm on Phoenix Iwaki's channel doing a honey heist. It's
nice.
A reversed honey heist, though, that we're all going to be like 3 kobolds in a trench coat pretending to be bears. It's going to be pretty funny. I've done a lot of one-page RPGs as well. I think another one of the one of the stretch goals that in that same stream that I committed myself to doing Pathfinder, I said that I would run a one-page RPG, and I've run one called Kaiju Girls, which is just as it sounds, another Grant Howitt one page where you are schoolgirls who are also able to turn into kaiju.
Sweet.
And it was a lot of fun. I've played in a few one shots with Sarah Moore from Sarah's Table. I don't know if you know her, but she's fantastic for running lots of individual games. She does all kinds of different and she often does them as 3 episodes, which is quite important, I think, for getting a feel for a game. Like if it's more than just a one page, then running them as a 3 game, you really get kind of a beginning, middle, end. You get into the arc of your character and stuff, but it's still short enough that you can commit to it without it being too much of your time. She ran a game called Rebel Scum, which was a very fun, definitely not Star Wars game. It's like you're using laser swords and laser rifles and stuff.
That's
fighting space Nazis and things.
I have a friend who put out he'll openly say it's a hack of the West End Games D6 Star Wars system, and it's called Hyperspace D6, and it's like, there's no Star Wars written in there. There's probably no lightsabers written in there, but it's
but
it's
cool. What it is. I played a really fun one called Sexy Battle Wizards as well. Have you played that one?
It sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's another Grant Howitt one page, and you have 3 stats: Sexy, Battle, and Wizard. and so if you're trying to seduce your way out of a problem, you roll Sexy. If you're trying to fight your way out of a problem, you roll Battle. And if you're trying to be a little more cunning with your way out of any problems, then you roll Wizard. It's 3d6s, so you just choose. Yeah, you got 3, 2, and 1. So in one of those 3 stats, you've got 3. In one of them, you got 2, and in the other, you've got 1. And so if you're not as good of a wizard as you are as sexy, then you might have 3 in sexy and 1 in wizard. And then if you're trying to roll to seduce somebody, you roll 3d6, and one of them has to be above the target number, like 5 or 6 or something, to succeed.
Yeah,
but it's very funny, and it can lead to some really hilarious situations where in one of them somebody was falling out of a plane and gonna hit the ground, and she's like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I think I had 3 in wizard for that game, so I was like, I open up a teleport, and you don't have spells that you just like roll you tell her what you're gonna do, and she's like, I'll set a DC for myself, 5. You need to roll above a 5. So you roll. I was like, I open a teleport and suddenly I'm on the ground or something like that. And then one of the guys who'd put 3 into sexy, he was like, I lean like this. I think it was Dag actually. I think it was Dag. He goes, I lean like this, and I take up a Fabio pose, and I try and land on Robert's character because I was playing a lion, like an anthropomorphic lion, and he's like, I'm going to land on him like a lion rug, and she's like, I'm pretty sure that's a sexy roll. You're trying to seduce the ground to not hit you hard, and he's like, yep, I'm going to try and seduce the ground to let me land on it softly. So
nice.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's just so many one-page RPGs that you just don't have. Even the one-page RPGs, because Grant Howitt keeps freaking churning them out. Yeah. So even there's so many indie RPGs, and they keep just coming out. So there's always more to be playing than just the indie. I played Call of Cthulhu with one of my mods. That was a lot of fun to dip my toes into that game as well.
Yeah, that's on my list for sure. I want to play that at some point.
Yeah, so much stuff. And that, you reckon, is going to be a little more of the future of WASD20, like leaning into some exploring some other games?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I try not to make any predictions about what the future holds. I need to follow my muse.
Yeah, that's fair.
And my muse is very fickle.
Where do you get your sort of muse from? When do you come up with ideas for new content? And
oh man, usually when I'm not in a place to really be sitting down and working, usually just I mean, I definitely have a little bit of ADD in terms of my work at school. I'll be grading papers one minute, then answering an email the next minute, then someone comes into the office, and I've got all these things going at a time. And in the back of my mind, I've also got RPG stuff and video stuff. So then I just open Google Keep, and a lot of it's just, it comes to me at random moments.
You just open up a document, chuck it in there, and be like, here's some ideas for future videos.
Yep, that's right. And I've got so many ideas. And then any given week, I'm sitting down and I'm just, looking at my ideas going, what is most doable this week? Or what is most inspiring is often what it is. Because I've got all these ideas that were once inspiring. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of work. Or
you look at it in your document and you're like,
negative.
I wanted to do that at some point, did I?
Yeah. Yep. Totally. So, yep. It's good though. It works.
What's the process look like once you choose an idea? Like you just like, right, let's just crack it out immediately. You just go while it's on my mind, or do you sit down and write the thing first?
I will often just outline a video. And just make some bullet points. That's most common.
So but just kind of get a through line of so that it's watchable, so that it's not just rambling and going nowhere.
Yeah. Yep. And if it's a product video, definitely I have bullet points where I'm got my camera on the product usually, and then I've got my bullet points on a little sticky note to my right, so I can just kind of make sure I'm remembering everything I wanted to say about that product.
Right.
And then for a lot of the GM tips videos or rants about certain topics, I do script some of those, and I use a little parrot teleprompter on my camera, and it works. But I try to remain flexible enough to deviate for sure from the script.
And it usually takes you an hour, a day? How long does it take to sort of do the filming process of it?
Yeah, so the filming process I usually do 3 takes, I'd say, on average. Right. And I use the third one invariably because it's I've this time I said it and I didn't know what I was doing. This time I said it and I was like, okay, that was a little too rambly. I think I can condense it because I don't want a 19-minute video. I would love a 12-minute video. So then I get the third time or something like that.
It makes sense.
Or the sound is screwed up on one.
Because quite often you'll go, okay, I'm coming in here because I think that's where it's going to be, and then you watch it or you do it and you're like, that's not right, and you're like, okay, let's correct that, and then you overcorrect and you're like, nope, that's too. Yeah. And then you find the middle ground and the third. The Goldilocks situation, I suppose.
Right. So that process can take me 2-3 hours. And sometimes it's like, I'll do one take tonight and then I'm going to bed and I'll do 2 more tomorrow. And then, the filming is the easy part for sure, for most videos, compared to all the prep that goes into it and the thought and a lot of times research. I did a video earlier in the week on 3D virtual tabletops. And that was a lot of research that I had to do, just trying to, ask people, hey, have you heard of more of these? Like what, and spending some time with some of them, not all of them, to get a feel for what they offer, reading reviews. So the formation of that video was, a good like 3 weeks off and on of just pecking away at a script. And then, and that's what took me so long. That was my drought. And then the editing, I would say, is usually anywhere from 5 to 15 hours.
Damn, man, it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a lot of work for the tip of the iceberg that people actually see. Yeah,
but it is fun. It's definitely something we're like, ooh, the editing. Yeah, I should probably start trying to find someone who can edit for me.
Yeah, so
especially a scripted video.
Yeah, I run an interactive D&D game on my channel called Twitch Tales every weekend, where people in the chat are controlling the actions of the sort of as a hive mind. They're controlling the actions of the solo player. And for a while, for the start of it, I was doing all the editing of that as well, and it was just like so much of a time sink into my day that I eventually, one of my mods was helping me above and beyond modding duties, Fancy Unicorn. And I was like, would you be open to me paying you to be more of an assistant role than just mod? And she still does modding for free as a volunteer, obviously, as all my mods are, and I would love to get to a stage where I can actually pay them all, except you, Wraith. And then she's like, yeah, sure. And then now she just goes above and beyond as an assistant as well as a mod. And I'm like, I still can't pay you more than I'm doing so, but I feel like I should be doing for all the damn work that she's doing for me, including editing all of my Twitch Tales videos, because God, it was such a relief of time when I'm not the one editing them anymore.
Yeah,
so much time.
Yeah, and I think at least for me, like I think because of that kind of like ADD scatterbrain sort of thing that I've got going, like I think someone else would be way faster at editing too. If it takes me 12 hours, I bet you this person who does a lot of editing and is really good, it could take them 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah. Well, I will crack into the questions from the audience then, the chat, and see what people have been asking.
Sounds great.
Exclamation mark requests. There we go. Don't forget to get your questions in now, guys. So if you have a question for me or Nate. Centauri asked an hour ago, what's a monster or a creature that you'd really like to have in a game, either as a DM or a PC? A monster or a creature that you'd like to use in a game that maybe you haven't?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't done much with dragons, so I think that's definitely on the list.
It's hilarious how infrequently Dungeons and Dragons come up in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, like I have run like a white dragon wormling in Sunless Citadel. I've done the Chardalyn dragon in Icewind Dale. There's probably a couple others I'm missing, but they were probably like in Pathfinder, the Black Dragon intro thing. Yeah. But yeah, like in terms of a proper like boss dragon, like not really.
I had a very fun Green Dragon arc in Twitch Tales where the main character got captured by a green dragon and outsmarted at every turn because of how cunning they are and all this stuff, and that was so much fun to run. Like to be utterly like inherently evil and to be such a cunning and clever and tricky kind of a monster and stuff. So dragons are real cool. I'd say one monster that I'm really looking forward to including at some point. It's so difficult to include them because they're definitely not a random encounter monster. You've got to have an entire arc dedicated to them. Is the False Hydra? I'd love to run the False Hydra. Sort of a story, which for anyone who doesn't know is kind of like, I don't want to spoil things too much in case you end up using them in games, but they're basically a monster that can make you forget that people ever existed. And so the best way to run False Hydras are to have some clues as to let's say you've got a 4-person party, have some clues as to the fact that there is a 5th one of you at one point and you don't realize it, sort of thing, and like have you turn up at the tavern and there's 5 chairs set out for you, or there's an extra bag, bag of luggage or whatever in your room when you wake up the next morning or something, and like there was never a 5th person there, but you are retconning that by making it seem like there was, until eventually you realize there's a False Hydra situation. Like you go to the tavern and there's a tavern man and his wife running the place, and the next morning the wife's missing and the tavern guy he claims that he's never been married. So those sorts of clues, it's like really you got to put a lot of work into like really layering it in, so that when the reveal happens that it's this False Hydra that's devouring people, and when they devour people they get forgotten about. It's a real like whoa. But I think one of the problems with one of the reasons I haven't used them yet is because a lot of my games are super roleplay heavy, and so it would really change the group dynamic immediately from that point on. I would be it feels like I would be dictating something for how they have to roleplay going forwards by being like, oh, by the way, you've got a friend who you're just as close to as all of these people, but you've just forgotten about them, and they would all just be completely changed as people from that point on. Yeah. So you got to find the right group to use one, I think. Yeah, for sure. That's cool though. That's really cool. Poppy the Sheep, nice name, asks, does the map design help to frame out possible political or linguistic or religious history, or are these easier to brew independently? I think the map really helps for me because I've always been a visual person, and diagrams really just help me. So yeah, I think a map can really help with that. Even if it's really rough, like oblong circle shapes, and then you can draw more circle shapes that are the borders of different regions. And I'd say 100%. Like political 100% is influenced by my maps. Like when I made my first ever island that I was going to set them on, and put in the mountains and the rivers and everything, the fact that I'd put a river that when I worked out the scale of the map turned out to be like a mile wide, I was like, oh shit, that river's way wider than I thought it would be. But that dictated, oh well, that means that the north of that river will be separated from the south of that river, and where they can't possibly have a crossing until way up the river, which means that these two are completely different, and so maybe they don't get along, or maybe they have water transport between them and stuff. And then there was another part that was like really difficult to get to. It was like a little peninsula that was also through a mountain range, and so I decided that was going to be my tax haven, because the king can't be bothered sending tax collectors out there because it's so treacherous to get there, and so like that's where all the rich people live. I decided where the windward side of the mountain was, and so where the wind haven became Wendraven, which is now my capital, because I was like, that's where people would have initially settled, and just all of that stuff. So politics was very much influenced by the geographic layout of my map. As for linguistic stuff, I don't tend to go into language differences too much, other than just elves and dwarves and common. In my world, I've introduced Humanic, which is the natural human tongue, which is very similar to Common, and it's what Common's based on, like English, but Common is more of a universal language. It doesn't have a real world equivalent. It's kind of human-like, but it has differences. But that's the only linguistic change I've really made to the game. And there are regional dialects of Elvish, and there are regional dialects of this and that. Like if you go into the Underdark, there is Under Elvish as well as Undercommon and stuff. But it's not really influenced by the map too much. And religious history, not so much. My religion doesn't really play into the maps. Don't really play into religion so much. Right. I feel like once you have your like kind of cultures in place, like religion is just a part of that. Yes. So
It may be geographic, it may not.
Yeah, like obviously the ones in the huge, big, magical forest over here, they're probably going to worship the nature gods, and the ones over in this big city are probably not. So it plays into it in that respect. Spates asks, "Hi Nate, what is your favorite creature to throw at players, and what is the most overrated monster that you have a roll your eyes feeling about?" So those are 2 questions. What's your favorite creature to throw at players?
Yeah. Honestly, I love like just low level monsters. I love running low level adventures probably because I love introducing new players to the hobby so much. So, zombies, skeletons, goblins, kobolds are so cliche, but I have so much fun with them.
Yeah.
In terms of like getting a little, more exotic, man, monsters like harpies are pretty cool. In Baldur's Gate 3, if you haven't played that, the creepiest harpies ever. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I find those really creepy and fun. And then
I've been holding out on playing Baldur's Gate 3 until it's properly released.
Right, and I kind of have too. I've dabbled, but yeah, I had to give myself a cutoff. Like, okay, I'm tired of them changing everything. Let's wait till it's done.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a cynic for the latest model of like releasing games way too early and stuff. And I'm like, can you hold out a little longer till you've got it made? Like, I understand that releasing it early gets you the funding to finish it the way you want to, but there has to come a point. You have to have it almost there. You have to have the majority of it before you release it. You can't just go like, hey, we've got 1 chapter, release it early, and then we've got all these glitches and problems with the game and stuff. And it seems to be the model that most games are going these days, which is
it's unfortunate. I think it is because there's a lot of good games that I just never come back to because I tried it and it was like it was okay, and now it might be really good, but anyway.
But the hype's gone for it.
Yeah. So, but monsters that I think are overrated, like, I don't know. Honestly, I love them all. Yeah. I love them all. I mean, no, there are some that I could probably say, like, this one is weak and this one, stuff like that. But no. I've never run a beholder, but I've gotten to play in a game with a beholder a few years back, and that was like that was a life goal. I love beholders, and it lived up to the hype. Like, that was cool. Just the different
that's good.
The different rays.
That's good, because I was wondering whether beholder would be an overrated one, because the randomized element has always kind of irked me with them. Like, they're so methodical, and like they've got everything about their lore is about how they have contingencies for their contingencies, 17 contingencies down. They're like they know everything. It specifically says that like it doesn't matter whether you burst into his lair riding on dinosaurs or like sneak in disguised as fairies. He has a plan for everything. And so to have a monster that is described as that, and then the stat block says he randomly can't control his eye stalks. I'm like, that doesn't work. But obviously, if you do allow him to choose which eye stalks to use in any situation, the challenge rating goes boom. So so that's kind of what I've got a beholder planned for my game, for one of my home games, and it's been planned since the beginning at like level 6, like 6 years ago when they were level 1. And I was like, I know that I won't get a chance to use this until they're at least like level 16, 17, because I'm gonna be using it as I want to use it. With all of that contingencies in place, it allows me to completely remove the filter of like metagamey stuff. So as the dungeon master, I'm constantly thinking, it's not the most optimal thing, but it is what the goblin would do. Like, would he wouldn't. And maybe sometimes I'm rolling like intelligence checks for myself just to be like, is this monster smart enough to know to fight tactically and stuff, and would he do this? I can remove all of those filters, and I can just use my Robert tactic brain to go, I'm going to fight to kill them. I'm going to use everything to my disposal. I'm going to use meta knowledge because the beholder would have it, and this and that and the other. So I'm excited to finally run a beholder fight, and he's definitely going to be using the stalks in a slightly less randomized fashion.
I think that's fair.
I've thought about a few ways to do it. I'm like, do I roll 4 and get to choose 3 of them? So there's a little bit of choice, but there's a little bit random. Do I just do I pre-roll a whole bunch of them, and then he has to use those ones in the fight, 3 at a time?
Yeah.
So there's ways to like not go from one extreme to the other and be like, you just get to choose all of the eye stalks.
Yeah,
There's
you
also
could almost run them like spell slots.
yes, yeah. There's also like you can only use an X number of this particular eye stalk between
Yeah.
rests, or like you can't use this one again until you've used all the other ones, or stuff like
Yeah, I
that.
like all
So
those ideas, and that's I think a fair critique of beholders, and I like your solution.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, as for my favorite creature to throw at players, I again like the I like level 3 to 5 monsters because they're like a nice chunk of hit points and they can usually do one or two cool things. I really like Displacer Beasts just because of their design, but also because they've got that cool feature that's a little bit unique.
Yeah.
Shambling Mounds is always a fun one because they can sneak up on a party really easily. Because I once had a party of new players, and because they were new, they were unaware of all of these cliches in the game. All
Yes.
these like,
I love it.
and so they were walking down the road, and one of them with a high perception hears a rustling in a bush nearby, and so she goes and she says, I quote, "I go and stick my head in the bush." Because in her mind, the rustling in the bush was a goblin hiding in the bush and not the bush itself, because she wasn't unfamiliar with the game and didn't realize bushes could be monsters. And so she sticks her head in the bush, and I go, the bush closes around your head, you are engulfed by a shambling mound. Roll initiative. It was brilliant. Marie asks, how do you balance your creative energies with teaching and RPGs? Marie is also a teacher. I find that I struggle to write during the week when I'm teaching. It's all on weekends and vacations, even if the stories are always playing in the back of my mind.
Yeah, so that's a huge thing I think for teachers that I can relate to. Just it's the creative energy. It's not the life energy. It's the creative energy, because teaching takes a lot of creative energy, trying to keep students engaged, and things like that. So for me, I do find that, like, for example, world building is something that I just don't get super into, even though I'm the map guy. Like I just don't. That's one place where I can say, okay, I don't need to put my creative energy into this to a large extent. I can still do some homebrew stuff, but I just keep it really simple. And I have like my 3 cities that we're going to be using for this campaign, and maybe like 4 or 5 towns, and that's good enough. And I don't go nuts with it and cataloging everything. I think that's one reason that running a module is sometimes works well for me too. It's just, I
Takes some
tend
of that
to
creativity onto somebody else and be like, you decide for me.
Yeah. So I don't always run modules, and I don't always run in published settings, but those are things that can sometimes help me for sure. Oh.
It makes
Yeah,
sense.
but it is challenging.
Hopefully that helps, Maddie. Redial asks, what's the most memorable D&D moment you've ever had?
Oh man. Okay. So
since 2014, did you say you got into
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, there have been some big ones. I think that there's 2 I'll mention, I think. Icewind Dale, finished that game up with Dag and a couple other friends of mine back in May. And the ending was just crazy. Dag was playing a Mind Flayer, and started off as like a Mind Flayer spawn sort of thing, this homebrew class. And then there was another Mind Flayer stat that came out that he liked better, so we moved to that. And I was cool. And then we had a goblin in the party, and a Durgar, and a water genasi, who then turned into a Luxodon. So it was quite the just like, yeah, you think of the crazy looking D&D party, this was it. But yeah, the end, there was a huge twist where Dag turned on the party as the Mind Flayer, and it was hard. And basically the Mind Flayer took over, and their friend Nikos was no more. And that was like a really hard moment for all of us. And it was like, man, like this was a character death without really having a character death. And it shook the party a bit. And then in the last thing, like our goblin had pickpocketed like 2 sessions before a scroll of Comet from Dag's character. And in the end, when the Mind Flayer and the little goblin were flying off together and leaving the others to the destruction of the city, like the goblin pulled out the scroll of Comet and took them down. And that was pretty much the end of the campaign.
Wow.
So that was an epic moment. There's some others in the Provokers campaign. There were a few moments that I would say were super impactful, but yeah, there's one.
That sounds very memorable for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love it when something comes to a climax in that way.
And here's the twist. Dag's character knew like that he was losing himself essentially.
Yeah.
So like 4 or 5 sessions prior had given the goblin slipped into his backpack. I can't remember even what it was. It was some kind of protective barrier or something. It was a cube of force. I think it was a cube of force.
Yeah.
And said like, I know I'm losing it. I can't be trusted with this. Snuck it into his backpack. And the goblin used that cube of force to protect himself from the comet.
Oh man.
So it's just like, this was so poetic and beautiful.
Together,
and
love it when it comes together.
Just tragic.
Like, this thing comes back from so long before.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I love playing those sorts of characters that of like somebody who's losing themselves. I was in one of Dag's games. He was running a 12-part series of like a pirate themed game on his channel. And I was this pirate captain who was like being overcome by greed. There was this kind of spirit of greed was kind of embodying me, possessing me, as it were, and I was devolving into like trying to find this lost treasure. Then I enjoyed this kind of like descent down from the first like 10 episodes as I'm getting worse and worse and worse until eventually I'm like turning on my crew. And I told him like, I am perfectly happy going any way with this. Like if you want me to be the big bad guy at the end of the, like if they all have to fight me, blah blah blah, I'm down. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah.
But if you want a redemption
those are
arc,
cool moments.
then if you want a redemption arc, I'm down for that as well. And eventually, how he did it was on the 10th episode of 12. At the very end, I was chasing after this. I was a warlock, so it was my patron essentially had manifest as this enormous leviathan kind of a creature, and I was kind of chasing after it, and then I didn't get to it in time before it went through some sort of a rift, and then my greed and disappointment and hatred and all of the vitriol that I'd been storing up and devolving into manifest as its own creature out of my body, and I just fell back down to earth essentially. And then one of my crewmates ran out and saved me as I fell and tried to catch me and stuff. And then we ended up with this huge spectral winged creature that's basically me and all of my evil manifest. And then we had to fight that in the next session, and it was a really cathartic moment of like my guy was no longer greedy and all this shit in the next, because I kept having to say like, so is that out of my body now? Am I redeemed? And so then for the, and I'm glad that he did it on the antepenultimate episode, because then it means that we got 2 more episodes of fighting the thing, and then another episode of like coming to terms with what that means, and like making amends for the way that I'd acted and stuff. And my crew are all like immediately like, yeah, don't worry about it. You weren't yourself. We know what was in you. You can't be taken. But my character's like, no, don't let me off the hook that easy. And it's a really good moment. It's a good storyteller, Dag. I should probably get him on short rest sometime. I keep joking with Dag that I've been doing this for ages with short rests and stuff, and he's one of my closest colleagues and friends, and I still haven't got him on his short rest. I'm like, yeah, you're a backup in case my short rest guest calls out.
Nice, what a friend.
Poppy the Sheep asks, Halloween related, what's the creepiest NPC that you've ever played or situation that you've DM'd? Creepiest.
Yeah, creepiest. Okay, wait, creepiest NPC I've ever played?
Creepiest NPC you've ever played or DM or situation that you've put your players in.
Oh man. Yeah, so man, I'm not, nothing is really coming to mind. Yeah, there was an NPC I played once that was like a former veteran who had just former veteran's redundant, but anyway, a veteran who had been through awful things. And he basically had a like reconstructed body. It was almost like a fantasy Darth Vader sort of situation.
Yeah.
And I loved that character because he was good, but he came off as just creepy, like mechanical. The dwarves had helped him construct some sort of canister for his soul, almost sort of thing. And but he was good, but you wouldn't know it. So anyway, that was a really fun one.
Yeah, that's fun. I love creepy characters. I played a in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, Mr. Light, the jester that runs the carnival. He's like a
Yeah.
Shadakai or something. He's some kind of a drow or something. I can't remember what he is. But
Yeah.
he's some kind of creepy elf, and he was a lot of fun to. Hello, look,
Yeah.
are you having fun at the carnival?
Yep, that's good.
Last question
Yeah,
then.
for this.
Last question then, just because we've got a wrap for you to get to your
Yeah.
basketball thing. Baron Von Blast asks, any other interesting behavior methods that you've seen to keep in line with the requirements? Behavior methods? I'm not sure what you mean, Baron.
Maybe to keep players in line with the requirements.
Oh, right, maybe. Yeah. Can you clarify,
Yeah.
Baron? I'm not sure what you meant by that, sorry. And also, just while we're here, thank you, Dutch Dungeons, for the raid. How was your stream?
Ah, nice. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, while we're waiting for clarification on what Baron means by that. Oh wait, here we go. It's because the context came before the question. They said I had a friend suggest a method to me for character behavior with frustration. Roll a d100 over 2d10 and note the number as a conversation. As the conversation progresses, roll a d20, and once you reach the d100 total, your character acts out. That seems like a very mechanical way to handle role playing. Any other interesting behavior methods that you've seen? I've never seen behavior methods in that sense, because it does sound like making roleplay mechanics, and kind of feels a little jarring or icky to have to allocate that. I do put roleplay mechanics on people when they've got like a curse or something that is manifesting over time, and so like maybe once a conversation I'll roll to see if they act a certain way, and then I'll influence them by telling them like I'll usually still put it on them. So as the dungeon master, I'll use an example. In one of my games, there is a guy who's got a corruption point, and he doesn't necessarily know what that means, but as he's learning, I'm telling him he's got a couple of cursed items essentially, and every night he goes to sleep he has to roll, and he eventually failed the roll, and he got a corruption point for it. So then from that point on, the next day, the corruption has elements of like vengeance and retribution, and like needing to take violent revenge on your enemies, kind of a thing. And so every time he meets somebody, I'm like, what's a time that this person has wronged you? And he's like, and he has to roleplay something. He has to come up with a memory, or like a false memory of like, I think he called me the wrong word one time, and it kind of pissed me off a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, that's what comes to mind when you see him now. Like, he's a friend otherwise, but and I'm just like I'm just influencing and hinting at like your mind is starting to dwell on those times that you've been wronged, even if it's something that a normal person would let go. So I don't. Yeah. I try to avoid like telling him how to feel about stuff, even in corruption point elements. But I try and tell him what comes to mind, so that he can make the choice of how he feels about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it, and I would agree. Like, I don't really do it except with like cursed items, or like, long-term effects of being in certain environments that can, like the long-term madness
and stuff, and
long-term madness in D&D. But even that does feel sometimes a little bit gross, like revealing or removing that player agency in some ways. But I think it works. It works. You just got to be careful with it, and you got to have, I think, mature players who can handle it.
Yeah.
And I think also I could see a more mechanical way of handling it, like what you're talking about, in a very specific like system, where there's a system where we're playing we're playing hot-headed dwarves, and that's like the premise of this game. And like, so there's like a lose your cool mechanic or something. Like, awesome.
For sure. Yeah, like if it's a game that, because D&D is a war game, or its origins are as a war game, and so they say that there's 3 pillars of whatever: combat, exploration, and roleplay, but the combat is the load-bearing pillar. And so if there was a system that was just about the roleplay element, and it was designed around that, then I can imagine them putting in behavioral mechanics that's like dictates how you behave in any conversation, rolling charisma checks or whatever similar to see like how well are you conducting yourself in this conversation.
Yeah. Totally.
Man, I could talk for hours more, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
we both got to get back to doing stuff, so we better wrap it up. Where can people find you and your work?
Yeah. So, so youtube.com/WASD20 is the main place, but you can also find me. I'm fairly active on Twitter and Instagram as well. I've also got a Discord server. You can find that in the description of my video link there. And I'll be running a game hopefully in the next month or two for the 1D or one, not 1D. Now I did it. The One Ring. There we go. And that will be on youtube.com/WASD20 live.
Wonderful. So check out Nate on all of the things. Basically, Google WASD20 and you'll find him everywhere. And if you're here from Nate's community, welcome in. Thank you for joining. I'm Robert Hartley, GM. I'm a full-time Dungeon Master D&D player. I run for a comedy group called Viva the Dirt League, as well as Dungeons and Dragons in my own right at Robert Hartley, GM, and all of the different places. But for now, we will leave it there, and we will send you off on a raid. Who is online for a raid? We've got... Oh, Potatosaurus is doing some Dungeons and Dragons. Let's give her a raid. Raid... Potatosaurus.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. And it was great to have some great questions. So
thank you very much for joining me, and thank you guys for being here and asking your questions. I will see you guys next time. Bye. Hello, YouTube viewer. Have you followed me on Twitch yet? It's free and it lets you know when I'm going live, so you can join in all of the fun as it's happening.